Hey everybody, welcome. It has been such a freaking long time since we have gone live. Let me put something up really quickly while you guys come in. Hi guys. Hi. Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I have been live. I had to dust off my tripod and freaking remind myself how this works. Hi everybody. Oh my gosh, Eileen. Hi! Yay! Welcome back, everybody. So I don't know about you. I've just been feeling more out there and better with the weather lately. It has been a trip in Wisconsin, just so crappy, such crappy weather, and it's just terrible. So I am super excited to get you guys going today. We will have a great time and we will get you going. There's always a random bot that's here. I have no idea. It affects the entire OCD community when we go live. So just don't mind that person. Just like an intrusive thought. We're not going to mind that person. Super excited that you guys are here. So Sandra, I'm going to answer some of your questions, so go ahead. I don't want to cut off the comments because I would rather hear your comments. I could get rid of the bot, but he was on No CDs live for forever when I was over there. He's been on Lauren McMiken's live, so this person just waits for us to go live in the OCD community. I don't know if it's a virus or a bug, but yeah, so if I cut it off, then I won't be able to see your lovely people's questions and comments, and that's not what I'm here for. So we are going to leave it open. So have fun. So I'm going to answer some of your guys' questions. Feel free to drop it in the chat. Just comment and then hit post, and I should be able to see it. So I'll try to get to as many as I can, and I will record this and save this for you guys as much as you want, so you can go back and listen to it and all that good stuff. So Sandra is wondering, please explain why urges feel so real even though you don't actually want to do the thing. So this is super common. And if it didn't feel real, then we wouldn't take it seriously, right? We wouldn't register it as something that's important. When we have that urge or when we have that thought or whatever it is, right? But there's something about it that it feels so genuine and it feels so real. So then it's oh my gosh, well, that must be real, right? That must mean that I actually want to do it because it feels real. You have to understand the nuances and the trickery that your brain and your body is capable of. So when it comes to your brain and your body, they're just such comprehensive and complex mechanisms that there are going to be some things that are beyond our control and that are beyond our understanding. So for instance, when I sit down and I watch a scary movie with my husband, it feels really real, right? I'm very impressionable, as are probably lots of you. We probably share a lot of those same traits. But when I'm sitting down and I'm watching a scary movie with my husband, I have it in the dark, I'm paying attention, I am zoned in, I'm paying attention to the storyline. I'm not really paying attention to anything else. I'm invested. Right? I am emotionally invested. And whether it's reading, whether it's listening to a juicy podcast, whether it is a movie or whatever, this is something that our brains and our bodies just register as real because we're paying attention to it. Now, a lot of you are probably almost equally out there saying oh my gosh, I feel I am invested because it's so real. And that just makes it feel more real, right? If I was watching a scary movie kind of in the background with my husband and I was washing dishes or doing homework with my son and I was only half-heartedly paying attention, I wouldn't feel the doom in my chest when the killer comes up against that teenage girl, right? I wouldn't be on my tiptoes, kind of what's going to happen next. It wouldn't feel as real because I'm not paying attention to it. So the reason it feels so real is because your brain and your body just naturally do that sometimes when you're super invested in emotional content, whether that is someone else's drama, whether that is a movie, whether it's a book, whether it's a juicy true crime podcast, whatever it is. Your body does that in so many other ways outside of OCD So it's just a trickery of your body, a trickery of the brain. That's not something that you can control. You are responsible, though. You are able to make sure that that doesn't keep happening. So you can say, yeah, that's another opportunity for OCD and anxiety to pull me in. It's just another opportunity. As hard as it is for me and as much of a risk as it feels, as big of a responsibility as it feels like to tune into that, I'm choosing not to. I'm choosing to say no. I don't want to pay attention to that. So I'm going to move beyond, I'm not paying attention to that. And you keep doing whatever it is throughout your day. And eventually you will get that clarity with time that's like, oh, that was a complete bunch of BS, right? Like I didn't need to actually pay attention to that. And so then the next time that you have that urge or the next time you have that intrusive thought, you're going to have more evidence. You're going to have more experience in your body and in your brain to show you that it's not real and that it was just juiced up emotional content that you had been falsely paying attention to. No different from a book or a movie. Next question, what if I have OCD and an anxious attachment? How do I work through this without getting into the cycle of OCD? I love that you love my stuff. So I'm not as much of an expert when it comes to like attachment and all that stuff. I would encourage you to get away from the terms, to get away from the fancy terminology and the labels and all that stuff. I think that for some people that does provide some validation, right? Like, oh, I have an anxious attachment style. Like that feels like it fits. Like I have a phrase that fits my struggle. And that is so validating for people. I love the Enneagram. I identify as an Enneagram 8, and that is like hugely validating for me. However, at the end of the day, you do have to realize that like anxiety is anxiety, whether it shows up in your attachment or whether it shows up in your body or whether it shows up in this area of content or in this area of content. So try to get out of the specifics. Like, oh, is this OCD or is this anxious attachment? The functions and how everything is working together, like it all follows the same trajectory. So I would encourage you to still think of the basics of the OCD or anxiety cycle, which start first with this intrusive thought. This intrusive thought, this doubt, this image, this uncertainty, this kind of spam thought that has come out of nowhere that feels unhelpful and unproductive. And that thought is not necessarily the problem. Where it could become problematic and where we tend to get stuck and sucked into this vortex of anxiety is where we misinterpret that thought as being significant somehow. So we tend to misinterpret that thought as being significant. Oh my gosh, I had that thought about my partner, or I had that thought that person might be mad at me. I can't possibly handle that. I have to figure that out right now. I have that thought, therefore it must be real. It must mean something. I have to fix this right away. That's where we're getting stuck. And so whether it's about your anxious attachment in relationships or a relationship, or whether it's with something else, I would encourage you to zoom out. Like, don't get too sucked into the specifics of everything. I appreciate you so much. Have you ever heard of DPDR disorder? So I don't know that it's an actual disorder, but you're referencing derealization and depersonalization. So that is very common in OCD and anxiety and just people who experience panic, intrusive thoughts, so on and so forth. So what that is someone feels like they're kind of like out of touch with their body, right? Like they're kind of almost having this like out of body experience. And that of course can be super triggering. Like it's normal to be anxious about that when you don't have the context for it, when you don't know why it's happening. But here's what I would encourage you to consider. That initial, just like we talked about with the previous cycle, right? Like with the other person in the anxious attachment, that the problem is not the DPDR, the sensations of being out of your body or the sensations of being disconnected or not recognizing yourself. It's all the compounded bullshit that we, knowingly or not, add on top of that. So let's say that I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. I could go one of two ways, right? So I could go the direction of, oh my gosh, what does that mean about me? Like, oh my gosh, it's happening again. I don't want to handle that. I don't want this to happen. I'm going to freak out. This must mean something is wrong with me. This must mean that my mental health is da-da-da. This must mean that I'm going insane. I'm going to panic. I don't want that to happen. And you can see, right? Like that just feels very urgent. It feels very desperate. And so normally in that situation, if that's your mentality, you're going to try to do everything that you can to not feel that way. You're going to try to do deep breathing. You're going to avoid looking at yourself in the mirror. You're going to stop doing everything that it was that you had to do probably for the rest of the day. And you're just going to be hyper focusing and showing hyper awareness of these sensations. And then maybe you stop looking into mirrors. Maybe you are ultra aware of how you feel in your body all day, every day, and you're scanning your body. The other alternative and the other kind of direction in that fork in the road that you could take, although that's, probably seems impossible for you right now, is, whoa, that's weird. I don't like that feeling. All right, I'm going to let that be there. My only job is to not make it worse. That's what I want you guys to tell yourself, regardless of whether you are anxious about your relationship or you're anxious about a bodily sensation or you're experiencing DPDR. I want you, what I want you to be telling yourself and what I tell myself all the time is my only job is to not make this worse. We get stuck so many times like trying to make it better, right? Like we want to make our DPDR, we want to make our anxiety better. We want to make how we feel in our body better. But that is often very urgent. It's often done very desperately. It's often done with like this clinging feeling, like this clinging to something new and this like trying to escape from the present. And that will automatically make you feel more anxious and more avoidant of it in the future. And so if you can get into the challenge and into the habit of telling yourself, my job isn't to make this better. My only job is to not make this worse. You can allow yourself to have that initially uncomfortable experience of, whoa, that's weird. I just did not recognize myself in the mirror. All right, my only job is to not make this worse. How could I make this worse? It would make it worse for me to just like stop doing everything for the rest of the day. It would make it worse to go onto Google and do a lot of compulsive researching to figure out what it is that I'm experiencing. It would make me feel worse to go sit in a corner and try to do my deep breathing. So let it be there. I know that it feels so risky. The next thing that anyone would say in that situation is like, but how could I let myself feel that way? How could I let myself feel that way? What if? When it comes to this work, you all have to sit with a what if. For me, when it comes to my son, that's what if he dies in a school shooting today? That's what if he grows up and hates me? That's what if we're alone together and I end up doing something horrific? It's what if my dog dies in the middle of the night and I wasn't there to be with him? We all have to deal with a what if. And so whether it's contamination and having to deal with what if you get sick or what if you get someone else sick, you all have your version of your own what ifs that you have to sit with. And I encourage you to let yourself over time kind of build space and build willingness to sit with that. So that's where freedom is going to come in. That is where freedom is going to come in, where you can allow yourself to have that willingness to feel those things temporarily, and eventually it will go down. Are you going? I am not going to the IOCDF conference this summer. I had submitted a couple things. But they were with friends and I just didn't feel, I kind of just needed a break. Like I love the IOCDF conference, but I've gone every year for like the past several years. And we have a really exciting kind of summer happening. My husband is quitting his job to come and join my team, and his last day at his current job, like before he's fully transitioned, is June 30th. And so like, I really just want to be able to be here for him to like hold down the fort with my side of things. We have a busy summer with Eli. Like it's harder and harder to kind of take extended periods of time away from him. So I just needed kind of a year. And so I'm going to miss you guys, but I'll be at the virtual. Like I am super excited for the virtual. Are you medicated for OCD? So I don't mind sharing my story. I used to be, I'm not anymore. Back in 2018, I really struggled with postpartum OCD after having studied this work for like 10 or 15 years. And then, I got on medication eventually, maybe like a year and a half into my postpartum OCD experience. And I recently, maybe like within the past 6 or 12 months, have weaned off of that, and it feels great. So obviously it's a super like personal experience everyone's different. So just take it as you want. Medication can be super helpful. And I also think that it's very possible for people to recover and have a great life and have recovery without necessarily needing to be on medication. Jenna, I love your content. Thank you. Please, could I ask, have you done the Myers-Briggs? I'm sure I have numerous times, like in grad school and whatever. Like we had to do a bunch of those tests in some of my grad school courses, but I could not tell you what I am. I do know that I am an Enneagram 8, and that's how I identify. But maybe I should take the Myers-Briggs. How to handle horrible OCD dreams about my kids makes me not want to do anything, especially if it's something I don't do often. 100%. So dreams can be really, really triggering for people. I had one last night. People with OCD and anxiety tend to have very vivid dreams. I think our brains are just more active. I don't know that there's any like legitimate research to kind of back that up. But it's just very common for all of us to experience kind of those nightmares every once in a while. Especially the more anxious that you get about those nightmares and the more attention that you give to that content, the more likely it is that you're probably going to experience it again in the future. But what's really important when it comes to nightmares is to remember that you are not responsible for the thoughts that pop up, including in your dreams. Like, you literally are not responsible. You are not in control whatsoever of what you dream of. You are literally asleep. You cannot control what you dream. You are only responsible for what you do after. You are only responsible for what you do when you wake up. So some common rituals or compulsions that I see people do after having a nightmare like that, they tend to try to replay the nightmare. They tend to try to dig it up and analyze it. They try to understand what it means, why they had that. They try to do whatever they can to make sure they don't have those nightmares again in the future. They tend to, like this person is saying, it makes me not want to do anything. It makes them want to just isolate and not do anything. Maybe they're higher anxiety and triggered. You are in control of all of that. So the more that you give into that, the more likely it is that you are going to struggle in the future, not just with nightmares, but about other things too. Everything that you do or don't do is a vote either for OCD and anxiety, or it's a vote for recovery. And so you can it's not your fault that after a nightmare like that you don't want to do anything. Like, that's normal. You can't help how you feel, but you are responsible for whether you just like write yourself off the rest of the day, like don't do anything, or whether you challenge yourself, feel uncomfortable, and go out there and do the dang thing. I promise you're going to be anxious either way. You're going to be anxious whether you're at home stewing about it, wondering about why you had that nightmare and going on Google, or you're going to be anxious going out there and doing the dang thing. You're going to be anxious one way or the other. Time is going to pass one way or the other. Go and do the dang thing. I promise you will feel better having challenged yourself and having done something with yourself and not letting OCD and anxiety win than if you were to just stay home. Same though, keeps coming back since months, no improvement. I'm not sure which one you're referring to. It's so awesome to see you too. What to do with persistent anxiety. When you're having persistent anxiety, like the kind of image that comes to my mind is like a telemarketer that just keeps calling and just keeps calling and just keeps calling, right? So a telemarketer, if it's like super persistent, right? Like, it's probably getting something. My son is super persistent when it comes to certain things, probably because I'm giving in to him every once in a while, right? If I am not giving in, if I like have made it clear that I don't answer those questions or that I'm not picking up that telemarketer's phone call, if I have truly made that clear and I have set that boundary, it's probably going to eventually go away. It might not be perfect, like that telemarketer might come up every once in a while, but it's gonna eventually go down, right? So, when it's persistent anxiety and oh my gosh, it's there, I would ask you to get very honest with yourself about how are you picking up the phone? How are you picking up that telemarketer's phone call, right? Like, how are you picking up the phone? Is it you paying attention? Is it you not practicing acceptance and you wanting it to go away? Are you ritualizing somehow? Like, there are ways that you are participating in the back and forth. Anxiety and OCD can really only thrive with your participation. And so as much as it probably feels like this is so outside of your control and I have no idea what I'm doing, I would encourage you to consider what are the ways that you're picking up the phone. Overboss sells her body. I wish I could sell my body. That is really funny. What's your advice on OCD about dying? So whether it's OCD about this or OCD about dying or OCD about contamination, it's all the same. Like the same fundamentals stay the same. I do think that there are some teeny tiny little nuances that come up when it comes to very specific content like dying. I can really resonate with this because I've struggled with this concept a lot. I talk about all my students about this in the blueprint. I talk about how that was a really common theme for me with my son, and it still is. I've referenced that. And so when it comes to dying, I think a really big hurdle there, a really big barrier, but also what's waiting for you on the other side of that barrier and that hurdle is acceptance. Once you accept that you are going to die and that the people that you love are going to die and the pets that you love, like that is going to happen, what we can do is we can mourn that, right? We can mourn that and we can say, like, part of that acceptance piece is just throwing in the towel and knowing that, like, yeah, I'm not going to be able, like, no matter what I do, I'm not going to be able to control that. No matter what I do, I am not going to be able to control that. There is no way that I can control and know when I'm going to die or whether the people in my life are going to die. There's nothing that I can do about that to safeguard that 100%. Although that's what OCD and anxiety wants. What we can do, though, is I believe it was Jonathan Grayson who talked about this at an IOCDF conference once, which is we can start to live our second best life. This is a really big concept that I talk to my people about in the Blueprints, which is my digital course. It's, kind of mourning that fantasy that we have, that fantasy that we're never going to die, that fantasy that, our loved ones are never going to die, that our pets are never going to die. It's mourning that fantasy and then doing what you can to live your second best life, which is, okay, knowing that death is inevitable and that is going to happen at some point, maybe not now, but at some point, and I can't control that. How do I move forward with my second best life? How do I live my best life possible, knowing that that is possible, relinquishing control over which I have no control, right? How do I live that second best life? And that is a really, really kind of like eye-opening, like key point that I've talked to lots of my clients about too. Like just really that acceptance piece and learning to live your second best life. Like, and that kind of seems like you're settling, like, oh my gosh, I'm settling for a second best life. No, I mean, that's really the best that you have going for you. Like, I'd rather live my second best life than try to constantly be chasing an OCD and anxiety fantasy that is literally never going to happen. So that has always been very helpful for me. These are funny. What to do when confirmation bias makes you believe in thoughts? That is literally what confirmation bias does. So it's normal that it's making you do that. You just have to be aware of it and see it for what it is and kind of call its cards. And so for those of you who don't know, confirmation bias it's not just specific to OCD and anxiety. It is a very human cognitive trick that happens to all of our brains. So our brains make these little shortcuts, right? Our brains try to be very efficient, and sometimes with that efficiency comes some error, right? So in an effort to constantly be making sense of all the things that are coming up for us, every once in a while there's an error. But in order to make sense of these things, it has these biases, it has these kind of distortions every once in a while. And one of those biases, one of those tricks is the confirmation bias. The confirmation bias essentially means that whatever it is that you think, you're gonna actively be looking for information that confirms that belief. So if I come on this live and I think that you guys are going to think that I suck, all I'm going to be caring about are those stupid bot comments that are coming up, right? And like, I'm not actually going to see all the people who love me and who care about me and the people who are here live, right? If I come in here knowing that people respect me and I don't care about what anyone thinks of me, I am not going to care what the bot thinks. Another good example is if I go for a drive, and if I ask you to go for a drive and I say, count all the yellow cars that you pass, you're going to come back to me and say, oh my gosh, there were so many yellow cars. And it's like, there weren't any more yellow cars today than there were yesterday. It's just that now you were paying attention for it. Now, if I ask you, when you were counting the yellow cars, you might say 17. And if I said, well, how many green cars are there? You'd have no idea because you weren't paying attention to it. And it just goes to show, like, when you are selectively looking for specific information, knowingly or not, that kind of is what creates your reality, right? So if like I said, if I come into this live and I think everyone hates me and everyone truly thinks I'm a scammer and I'm using my body, it's just like really funny, then that's all I'm going to see, right? If I come into this and I'm like, yeah, I feel good about what it is that I do and I love you guys and I appreciate you guys, like that's what I'm going to see. In the OCD and anxiety sense, if you guys walk into a room and you expect it to be dirty, you're going to look for information that confirms that. If you go into a relationship and you anticipate that they're not the one, you're going to look for and actively seek out information that kind of confirms that while disregarding all the other evidence. So it's just really important. You can't fix that. That is just like how our brains work. You can be mindful of it and you can kind of call its bluff, right? Like whenever you find yourself in that situation, just remind yourself, like, even though you were counting yellow cars, the red and the green and the blue cars still existed. So just zoom out, right? Like just zoom out and remind yourself of kind of what's there. I struggle with getting into a relationship. I put a lot of pressure on the relationship going perfect, and I always end up with guys who are unavailable. This triggers my OCD. How can I get through this? Relationships are tricky because as soon as you involve another person, in anything, right? Like as soon as you involve another person in anything, there's uncertainty because you can't control other people, right? Like there's just an enigma of doubt, essentially, and things that you can't control because it's an entirely separate person and you cannot know ever with 100% certainty anything like that. I would encourage you in this situation to identify the ways that you, because of that heightened pressure, because of that heightened anxiety, that you do probably, do things that are wanting it to be overly perfect. Like I would be very specific and very objective about what those problem behaviors are. So whether that is texting too frequently or whether that is checking your phone frequently, whether that is, I don't know. I haven't dated in like 17 years, so I don't even know what that's like. But like I would just get very specific and very objective about like if I were in the room or like I was kind of watching this whole thing, how would I know that you put a lot of pressure on yourself to make it perfect? How would I be able to see and witness that? Make that super objective, make that super obvious, like, not about feelings or anything like that. Make it obvious, like actions, and then consider for yourself, like what are the chances that maybe you would be willing to, the next time that this happens, postpone some of those behaviors or reduce some of those behaviors. And it's going to feel kind of scary, right? Because it's like not what you're used to. But again, if this is something that you value and you don't want to be doing these things, it seems like these behaviors haven't been very helpful for you and they might have actually backfired in a lot of ways. This change is what has to happen in order for you to move forward. Real event. Oh my gosh, so many questions. I was just going one line at a time. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do this more often. You guys are awesome with all these questions. I'm so glad that you liked that explanation. Yes, you can tolerate it and it isn't always going to be this way. Yes, 100%. I'll take one more question because it is 12:30 and that time went by really, really quickly. You guys are also giving such good feedback in the chat. So one last question and then we'll wrap up. I will make sure that this is recorded for you guys so you can go back and watch it and come back to it if you need to. But if you need another resource and you're heading out DM me the word strategies or comment the word right there. If you just comment the word strategies, then I'll send you a link to a free masterclass that I have that will be a really great follow-up to this. So if you haven't taken that free masterclass, just comment the word below strategies and it will automatically link you to that if you want to keep the good vibes going. And it will be a really good start to your weekend because I know weekends can be really, really challenging for people too. So how do you deal with the thoughts that your hands are not clean enough even after washing them excessively? So if you've been washing them excessively, it makes sense that you don't feel clean enough. You are never going to feel clean enough. You are never going to feel sure enough about your relationship. You are never going to feel confident enough or sure enough that you didn't hit that person with your car. You are never going to feel certain that you were going to heaven. Like insert whatever. You're never going to feel enough because OCD always raises the bar. That's just what it does. It always raises the bar. It says, okay, I haven't washed enough. Okay, I'm just gonna go back and do it one more time. Okay, well now you've set that bar for next time and you're still gonna feel like it's never enough. So I posted some research a long time ago. Maybe I need to talk about it again, but they've done tons of research to show that you'd think that the more that you check something, I believe this research was on like checking stoves, but I don't care whether it's a stove or your hands or whatever, it's still the same processes. They did some research that showed that when you, for people who have OCD and anxiety, the more times that they checked a stove to make sure that it was off, the less confident they actually were in the fact that they turned it off in the first place. So these people had checked the stove to make sure it was off like 5 times, 15 times, 20 times, 30 times, 100 times. And you'd think that the more times that they checked, the more confident they would be that it was turned off. You'd think, in this example, that the more you wash your hands, the more sure you'd be that your hands are clean. But that's not the case. Especially when you have OCD and anxiety, it actually has the opposite impact. It actually has the opposite effect because your brain kind of gets the message like, well, shit, like you must not be washing correctly because you keep going back and having to wash your hands. So, you have to be mindful. Your brain is always paying attention. Your brain is always listening and picking up what you're throwing down. So if you are constantly washing because it's not enough, your brain is going to get the message that the way that you are washing is obviously not good enough because otherwise, why would you keep washing your hands? If you keep checking the stove or checking the light or checking the faucet, your brain is getting the message that you can't be trusted because otherwise, why are you checking it 200 times? Right? So your brain is always picking up what you're throwing down, and what you're throwing down via your actions and your compulsions and avoidance and all that stuff, it gives your brain messages, and then that sets you up either for success or for challenge next time. So a couple minutes over, but I hope that this was helpful. Thank you guys for hanging in there. DM me or comment the word strategies and I will send you my free masterclass. It is about 40 minutes, jam-packed. You can watch it. There's a couple spots and a couple times for you guys to pick from, but definitely do that. Really good for you to watch, especially over the weekend. Weekends can kind of suck for people when you have OCD and anxiety. I know, I've been there myself. Just less structure, less like healthy distraction to kind of keep us going. So that is a really great way. Coming off of this live, schedule it, hold yourself accountable to it. Let me know what you think about it and just hold to it. If you sign up for that masterclass, that is something that you can easily put on your weekend and have hopefully a better weekend and a more guided and more supported weekend than you would have had without it. So the word is strategies, and I will send that to you right away. This was really fun, you guys. I will have to do it more often. Thank you so much for all the awesome questions, all the awesome support. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon.